Shall we get started, Kate?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. We're really delighted to have you all with us. Thank you so much for making the time, and a huge thank you to the session facilitators, as well as the young people who have given their time into preparing and being here today. We're really excited to have this conversation with you in order to be sharing key ideas from the book, Young People in the Global South, Voice, Agency and Citizenship, and to have a conversation about the next steps for young people's political and civic participation. My name is Nicola Jones. I'm a research fellow at ODI and the director of the GAGE program. And we're really looking forward to the session today to also create an opportunity for young people who have contributed to the book to share their perspectives with a diverse audience and to be able to give direct feedback on how to support young people's participation at all levels. The way we're going to organize the session today is that first, several of the co-editors are briefly going to present some of the key ideas in the book, and then we'll have presentations from some of the young contributors to the book, and they'll be joining us from Peru, the DRC, and Lebanon. Please put your questions in the Q&A box for the young people, and once they've finished their presentations, we'll have an open question and answer session. And then, so there's a more chance for everyone to participate in the discussion. We'll be moving into 5 breakout rooms where we can delve into the book's themes and ideas in more depth. And then we'll all come back together to share the key points and have some closing comments from Dr. Nyaradzayi, another one of the co-editors, about next steps for supporting civic engagement and political participation by young people. So what I would like to do just to set the scene for the conversation today is just to highlight why we think the book is so timely. As many of you will know, last year saw the launch of the 1.8 billion campaign and also the Global Forum for Adolescence in October in recognition of the potential of the world's largest cohort of young people. However, according to the latest 2023 SDG dashboard, looking at progress in low and middle income country contexts towards adolescent and youth-focused sustainable development goal targets, many of these are off track and stagnating. So there's really an urgent need to accelerate progress, including around youth engagement in targets 16.7 and 17.6. So this year in September, there's going to be the Summit of the Future, and this is being billed as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enhance cooperation on critical challenges and address gaps in global governance, but also to reaffirm existing commitments in the Sustainable Development Goals, including for young people. I think it's also worth mentioning that we're also midway through the Generation Equality Action acceleration plan, which includes a pillar on feminist movements and leadership, and this has a really strong emphasis on youth-led organizations. I also want to mention that this is a really good opportunity for us also to reflect on the changing nature of spaces for engagement with the rapid pace of technological developments and increasing connectivity, including in many global South contexts. So it's a helpful juncture to take stock of this and what it means for young people's engagement. And then finally, I think it's really important to emphasize that we're also seeing, unfortunately, unprecedented levels of young people affected by forced displacement, as well as by distress migration, where young people are facing compounded challenges in these settings in terms of exercising voice and agency and finding opportunities and support to engage in their communities. So we also want to be discussing that in the conversations today. Before we move to discussing some of the key ideas and themes in the book, it's important to go over some of the house rules for the webinar. So I want to emphasize that this is a multi-language, mixed age and mixed audience event. In the events of supporting, in the interest of supporting participation and engagement by everyone, please make sure you're using accessible language. The interpreters have kindly asked to speak as clearly as possible and not too rapidly. Please do ensure that if you need translation, that you've switched to the correct interpretation channel. We have interpretation in Spanish, French, and Arabic. And I'll also note that the young people who are joining us will be presenting in Spanish, French, and Arabic respectively. So if you're listening in English, do select the appropriate interpretation channel. There's a button at the bottom of the menu bar. Please use appropriate language. There will be moderation in the chat as well to control for that. And then finally, but very importantly, all under 25-year-olds should have received a safeguarding kit. If you haven't, please do email Sylvia or also email her with any queries that you might have. So I hope that's all clear. What I'd like to do now is to introduce my colleagues, Kate and Lorraine. So Kate Pincock is a qualitative researcher with GAGE and also a research associate at Oxford University. And then also Professor Lorraine van Blerk is a professor of human geography at the University of Dundee. Over to you. Thanks, Kate. Kate, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I just had to take a moment to come out of the screen share so that I could unmute myself. I will start again. So thank you very much, Nicola. So Nicola's described the timeliness of the current policy environment when it comes to young people's civic engagement and participation. So I thought I would now say a little bit about what's important and unique about the book from an academic perspective. So over the past 3 decades, there's been this growing interest in youth politics within global development. And that's started this evolving debate over what is the role of young people and adolescents in political processes. And that debate has shifted a lot over this period of time. So back in the 1990s, growing global unemployment rates meant that young men in particular were seen as a danger to democracy who needed governments to come up with policies to encourage them to participate in more positive ways. And you may have heard this referred to as the youth bulge. And there are a lot of theories about the instability that that might cause. And then more recently, we've seen that young people's participation has become increasingly seen, as Nicola suggests, sort of really important to sustainable and peaceful development in many, many ways. And as a result of this shift, there's been more and more interest in young people's civic engagement. However, it's traditionally been seen in quite a narrow way. It's often seen by governments about preparing young people to be good citizens of a country. And as a result, it often involves kind of school-based clubs and activities, often that are led by adults rather than initiated by young people themselves. However, scholars are increasingly arguing that formal political activities like voting or belonging to a political party or joining an organised group, they're only some of the very many ways in which young people participate in public life. And researchers working in the global north, so in Europe and the United States, have started to show the ways that adolescents and young people engage with politics and act like citizens in lots of other different ways. And they might include, more obviously, political activities, like signing an online petition or going to a protest in person. But they can also involve activities like getting together with other young people to discuss and work to resolve issues that are important to them and their communities. And those activities are based in young people's lived experiences and their real opportunities, rather than what adults define as important or create space for them to do. And so one of the ways that these activities are talked about is as everyday politics. And that's a really important term for thinking about young people's politics because it challenges existing ideas about what it is to be political. However, there's been much less work on young people's everyday politics outside of the global north. So there's been very little research on this in Africa and Asia and Latin America. And the research that has been done in these parts of the world, it's often tended to look at older young people, so who are above the age of 18. It's paid the most attention for men and boys, because it's still influenced by the idea that it's these groups who are more likely to use problems within governments. And much less is known about the experiences of younger adolescents, about girls, and about other groups of young people who might face barriers to participating in public life. For example, because they have a disability or because they're a refugee. And research for these groups, when it is done, it's generally very small scale and short term. And that means we can't properly understand what works to support their participation. So this book is really an attempt to increase what's known about these groups and to draw on their experiences to improve the ways that we analyse and support adolescents and young people's citizenship. So to do this, the book explores how young people around the world take action and make their voices heard on issues that affect them. So it includes 16 pieces that are authored by young people themselves, some of whom are speaking today, or co-facilitating the breakout sessions. And these sit alongside case studies on research from hugely diverse areas of the world. And this is truly unique. There are no other textbooks that we're aware of that include pieces by young people alongside academic work like this. But we believe that if we're serious about young people's agency and participation, we need to be making more room for their voices in this kind of publication. The chapters in this book also move beyond the idea of civic engagement as something that only happens through formal politics, by highlighting the experiences of young people who often face constraints on their voice and agency and citizenship, including street-connected adolescents and youth, LGBTQ young people, very young adolescents, and young people from communities that are marginalised on the basis of ethnicity or their geographical location, and girls for young mothers. So, and that allows us to see how inequalities can shape opportunities for participation and how barriers to participation then can be addressed through policies and programming. So I'm going to hand over to Lorraine now to talk a little bit about what our approach to young people's citizenship means for research and the kind of methods that we can use to explore these ideas with young people.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so I'm Lorraine van Blerk and I'm at the University of Dundee and I'm Professor of Human Geography. And what I've been asked to talk about is particularly around the methodological and research philosophy of the book. So our approach to participatory research and working with young people on this book, as Kate highlighted, it has 16 chapters by young people themselves. Kate also highlighted that young people in the Global South experience numerous barriers to participation in public life and in decision-making that affects them. And so the book aims to celebrate the continual efforts that have been made and that are continuing to be made to overcome these engagement challenges through critical contributions from academia, practice, and young people themselves, particularly through research and the importance of research in leading these debates. And, work with and engagement with children and youth through geographies of children and youth, sociology of childhood, global development studies. There's been a real forerunner here around participatory research. These areas have absolutely led the way in ensuring that we can produce research with communities and people, and particularly with young people. Many of the chapters in the book demonstrate how participatory collaborations have enacted change in positive ways in communities by young people and highlight how research has a central role to play in supporting young people's activism and change making. Often, as you see in the chapters, that engagement in research has given evidence and backing to young people to be able to engage in those debates. But the chapters also show how we can transform all types of methodologies into participatory research. And there's evidence here from qualitative studies, from quantitative studies, and also longitudinal research approaches that have all engaged with this participatory philosophy. And if we take the specific subheading of the book, Voice, Agency and Citizenship, we have to note that this is a really important statement, and one that aims for the book to truly demonstrate how participatory research has to go beyond academic discussion and grappling with the novel ways in which young people can illustrate their own views, experiences, and have impact in decisions that affect their own lives. The broad range of perspectives contained in the book show how participatory research enables young people to have that really important seat at the table in formal settings, but also in informal settings, and how they can be taken seriously, presenting collective experiences and realities beyond the individual emotional counters of individuals, but actually presenting evidence from the work that they've done from groups of young people. And so the chapters in the book cover a broad range of citizenship topics, including gendered perspectives, citizenship beyond borders, the lived citizenship in marginalised contexts, and in policy and programming. And what all of these have in common is exploring how, as we say on page 3 of the book, young people enacting lived citizenship across formal and informal spaces as change agents can subvert and challenge politics. Oh, my slide changed and then it went back again. Can we go forward? Yep, there you are. That's it. And so I think one of the key factors about the book is how it demonstrates the value of participatory research for advocating young people's voice, agency, and citizenship in decision-making and transformation. And to end on that note, I think it's really important that we go to our young people who have written chapters in the book. And the chapter by Carlos, page 107 to 108, has this really powerful quotation that I just wanted to end this piece with, because it really speaks to this value of participatory research for voice, agency, and citizenship. And he says it's essential to listen to what children and youth have to say. It is crucial for our personal growth, self-esteem, and to bury stigmas. This research strengthened our activism sentiment and made us even stronger. And here he's talking about the research that he's reporting in his chapter, and I would encourage you to go and read it. He continues, we felt empowered to use methodologies to produce data and evidence. And I think that's critical, that research here is providing evidence for young people to make their cases. And with our findings, we were able to raise these issues to adults, including decision makers, in a more credible way. So participatory research is beyond inclusion. It's about providing evidence for young people to state their views in a credible way, to have that participation in civic engagement. And so I now have the privilege of moving on to actually hand over to our presenters this afternoon. We have several young people who are going to present from their work. And I think we start with Jason. And Jason is a children's rights advocate and a member of the Children's Parliament in his hometown of Beni in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's my privilege to welcome you and all the other speakers that are going to follow you. And so to hand over to Jason.
Jason, have you been able to join? I can see that you're online.
Kate, I'm chatting with Jason over Skype, and he's having problems to open the mic.
Okay. Shall we maybe start with one of the other
and
presenters?
then later he can join.
Perhaps we can start then with We could start with Arkan, if she's ready to present.
Yes, sure.
مرحبا، أنا أركان، عمري 17 سنة. أنا لاجئة فلسطينية في الأردن وأعيش في مخيم غزة، طالب في مجتمعي، وأهمها تحديات المتعلقة بقدرتي على المشاركة. فرص المشاركة نادرة جدا، وفي مجتمعي فتيات يواجهها تحدي ثقافة العائلة، حيث لا يسمح لنا الانخراط في المجتمع بسهولة ولا التعامل معه بحرية.
I think because we're having some difficulties with the Arabic translation, maybe would Sally feel happy to interpret following Arkan's speech?
We can hear you, thanks, Sally. So you're just going to summarize because the Arabic channel is not working, right? Brilliant. We can hear you well, thanks, Sally.
Vision problems and difficulties. I faced many challenges in my community, the most important of which were challenges related to my ability to participate. Opportunities for participation and volunteering in my community are few or rather rare. And in my community, girls face the challenge of a culture of shame, as we are not allowed to engage in the society easily or freely. Arkan, please go on.
أما التحدي الثاني هو وجود فرق في التعامل بين الفتاة والشاب في مجتمعي، بسبب أن المخاطر هنا أعلى على الأنثى أكثر من الذكر، لأن في المجتمع ممكن أن تتعرض الفتاة للكثير من المخاطر والعنف الموجه نحو النساء والفتيات، ودائما ما تكون للشباب الأفضلية في التعامل داخل وخارج الأسرة. وبشكل عام هذا هو الحال بوجود أو عدم وجود الإعاقة، فوجود الإعاقة يفرض على الإناث تحديات أعلى من الذكور. فمثلا عندما تواجه الفتاة صعوبات بصرية يمنع عليها الحركة والتنقل تماما، أما الذكور يسمح لهم بالخروج والتنقل.
The second challenge is that there is a difference in treating girls and boys in my community because the risks are higher for females than for males. Because in this society, girls can be exposed to many risks and to violence directed towards women and girls. The males always has an advantage over girls, either inside or outside the family. In general, this is the case with the presence or absence of a disability. The presence of a disability imposes greater challenges on females than on males. For example, when a girl faces visual difficulties, she is completely prohibited from mobility, while males are allowed to go out and have free mobility. Arkan, please go on.
منذ 5 سنوات اشتركت في البحث التشاركي في GAGE، وساعدتني المشاركة على زيادة ثقتي بنفسي وسهولة التعامل مع الأشخاص والتعلم الثقافات الأخرى في مجتمعي، وشعرت أن صوتي مسموع. كنت قادرة على مشاركة تجاربي من خلال الصور ومن خلال إتاحة الفرصة لنا بالتكلم بحرية أثناء المقابلات والمشاركة تجاربنا بحرية تامة وبدون أي انتقاد.
5 years ago, I participated in GAGE participatory research. This participation helped me gain more self-confidence. It also became easier for me to deal and cooperate with people. And I learned a lot about other cultures in my community. Moreover, I felt that my voice was heard. This is because I was able to share my experiences through pictures, and we were given the opportunity to speak freely during interviews and share our experiences completely free and without any criticism. Arkan?
أنهيت. وهي بعض الصور اللي كنت ألتقطها عن حول مجتمعي وعن التحديات والصعوبات اللي كنت موجودة فيها.
I have finished my presentation, and these are some of the pictures that I have taken about my challenges and my experiences in my community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally and Akan. Has Jason managed to join or not? Patricio, have you heard? No? Okay. So Kate, does our third young person online?
Yes, can we move to Kiko and Layla and Macon? And can I remind people to select the Spanish interpretation channel?
Hola.
Hello,
Buenas tardes con todos.
good afternoon to all of you. My name is Keiko Campo. I am a psychologist, young Peruvian women, and I am also a political authority in my district. First, I would like to send regards from my country and to congratulate you for this important publication. And also we like to say thank you to jointly with Maicon and Leila for the opportunity that we had to be part of the construction of this valuable book. And we have included our participatory experiences. Of course, our participation did not include only our own perspectives, but also the collective experiences that we have had with the adolescents and children from different areas, different spaces, especially those spaces that were generated by World Vision. These experiences are really richful and are put into this book because this is an evidence of how when you start working with young children, adolescents, we can empower, we can be strengthened, and then we can able to participate and to try to find solutions for all the problems that we face. And once we have this experience, we can then be part of networks, institutions, collective movements where we continue raising our voices, and we could also be responsible for assuming in political roles, because in these political positions, we can demonstrate that we are able to be part of this political life. Also, we can contribute to improve our society by building public policies, trying to overcome all the barriers that we face as young people. I also think that this initiative is really important because the people all around the world is going to be able to realize the importance of giving that space for adolescents and young people, because that is making a change in our lives. This book also represents heritage, you know, a very important heritage that we are leaving for other young people, so that other adolescents and young people can raise awareness about these important aspects. And also they realize that we have the potential to be change agents. It's like We need to ensure that there is an intergenerational change, because in that way we will be able to build a better society for the future generations. And for that to happen, we need to be involved. We need to have a meaningful participation in all their diversity. I pass the floor to my colleague.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leila. I'm 17 years old. And well, our age doesn't define our capacity. And what this really means that there are some people that think that if we are teenagers, if we are young, we don't have good ideas. Muy buenas tardes. Espero que todos se encuentren muy bien. Un abrazo fraterno desde la
Good afternoon. I send you regards from Ayacucho in Peru. When I received the question about what is the role of adolescents and young people now, many people say that we are the future of society, but it's not. We also are the present of society, and we are trying to generate impact for our society. We need to know that we as adolescents and young people, we have innovative ideas. These ideas can create a big impact in our society. I would like to start by saying that in my organization, Al Elite, in Ayacucho, we've had a very important experiences. I was able to learn about many new things. We are eager to learn. We are eager to change the world. And that is what encouraged us to continue working for the better future for our society, for our country. We are also passionate. We love to share actions with other girls and to encourage other girls to be part of our organizations, because we want that all the voices of the girls should be heard by the authorities. If 3 years ago someone had asked me what is going to happen to me, I didn't realize how much I was going to grow. I was so shy in the past, but now, I am part of this network. We are talking about adolescents, participations, engagements, and my colleagues in my organization told me that we have a different perspective, that we can generate big changes because we have different ideas than the adults. Maybe we are more creative because we have seen all the challenges that we have in our communities, problems with health, violence, mental health. But thanks to the spaces that we have been given and thanks to the publication of this book, we can ensure that more girls, more boys join this initiative, and we try to do the best for our families and for our community. Now we are discussing about food security and climate change in Peru. I think this was a very important opportunity for us to think how to change these aspects in our lives. And I would like to say thank you to all the people here for giving us the space and the opportunity to participate in this book. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those very powerful reflections. Just checking.
Sí, buenos días.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Gracias. Good morning from Peru. My name is Maicon Quispe Quinto. I am 23 and I work in Huancavelica region. I send you my warm regards from here. It's cold here, but our hearts are warm. I am supporting boys, girls, and adolescents in my Yauri district, and I'm also part of a network of young people. In Boys Agency and Citizenship, with Keiko and Leila, we are trying to tell them the importance of the participation of young people based on our experiences in Analyte or in the experiences in our network. We are trying to improve the participation of them. We are telling in the book how was the organization process, how we gathered together, how we develop an agenda for children and youth. We are really grateful for being part of this book. Thank you very much. And let's share this with all our organizations. Thank you very much. Greetings from Huancavelica.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to Keiko, Maikon, and Leila. Just wanting to check to see if Jason, I know he's been valiantly trying to get online, but keeps being bounced off. Do we have any updates, Kate?
I'm not sure. I've made Jason a co-host to see if that would help him with access, but it doesn't look like he's now online.
So maybe what we can do is that if Jason does manage to join later, when we're closing, he could reflect then, just to say that Jason is a young children's rights activist and a member of the Children's Parliament in the DRC. So it would be great to hear more about his experiences, but we'll keep trying and hopefully we can connect at some point during the webinar. So thank you so much for all of those reflections. What we'd like to do is to take any questions that you might have for Akan, Keiko, Leila, or Maikon. Does anyone have any questions? Please do put them in the chat. Just while we're waiting for people to feed in questions, maybe just to start off with, it would be great if any of you have any reflections on what people or opportunities have made it possible for you all to participate in the ways that you've described. We'd love to hear your reflections. Okay, well, we'll leave you to reflect on that, and perhaps there's an opportunity.
Disculpen.
Maikon, go ahead.
Sí. No sé si la red está un poquito mal. No sé si se puede repetir la pregunta, por favor.
Okay. He's asking to repeat the question because he didn't listen to it and the internet is not working well. Could you please repeat the question?
Of course, yes. So I was asking whether you might be able to reflect on what people or opportunities made it possible for you all to participate in the ways that you've just described.
Claro. Sí, nosotros en el proceso de organización.
In the process of our organization, we mentioned World Vision. It's NGO that maybe for my case and maybe for Leila and Keiko, they supported us or given us the space for the participation in my district. So it was that space that helped us to develop our abilities. In the past, we were part of school curriculums or school clubs, but were those spaces promoted by World Vision that allow us to gain self-confidence and then The municipality also provided us some space. So here in Jauli, for example, this type of opportunities were created for young people. We started little by little to participate in things like PPR, that is the results-based participatory budget, the local consultation council, and also at national level. So it was the process, but it's important to mention the willingness and the concern of World Vision and other institutions that were willing to provide these type of spaces for young people. So I think that one, we were able to share our opinions, to say what we think, and based on that, we started to think not only on ourselves, but we started to have collective thinking to try to work for our community, for our neighborhoods.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Maikon. I see we've got two hands up, so I'll hand over firstly to Carlos.
Yeah. Does everyone can hear me?
Yes.
So I'm gonna do that question in Spanish because Maicon speaks Spanish and I think that's fair, right?
Definitely,
Okay.
go ahead.
Bien, Maicon, siempre que tengo la
Michael, anytime that I have the chance to listen somewhere from the Annalee network, and the people living in Peru always talk about the Annalee network. Can you please explain us more about the network? And the question is that, could you please ask or explain about the Annalee, what does it means, or for how long have you been participating in the network? Thank you.
You want to directly respond to that, colleagues from Peru?
Sí,
Sí.
primero para reforzar un poquito lo que
First, as Maicon mentioned, he mentioned the important opportunity that we had were the spaces created by World Vision. In the case of Maicon, he was able to participate when he was 8 or 9 years old, or Leila also. Now I am 28, but I also started at 14 when with this World Vision opportunities. So I think that this type of opportunities that we find in our communities help us to empower ourselves, and also the support of the family is key, so that our parents believe on that and they support us throughout this participation process, because sometimes the parents were not approving the participation of their children. So when our parents come with us, support us, that is very important for the development of these spaces. And also when you have committed authorities, the authorities that are really willing to have participation spaces for children and adolescents, because at local and regional level, there is a commitment from the authorities, and they are creating the mechanisms in order to ensure that we have a meaningful participation. ANALIT is the National Alliance of Leaders, is the national alliance from Peru. It started with 6 regions from the country. World Vision was working in these areas through their program areas. This started when Michael was a child and I was 14. And I think that the experience and the impact of this network has been really important for our lives. Yeah, I want to, if right now I am, I am being part of the public life in my community is because of that I started when I was a child.
Fantastic, really inspiring to hear about that journey of change making. Great, so I'll now hand over to Yashika. You had your hand up for a question.
Thank you so much, Nicola, for allowing me to speak here. And thank you so much all the speakers who shared their journey. It is actually very impressive to have such young voices share their stories of change. It really motivates us also. I, being a young person myself from the global south, it is very important to have such voices. I had a question about the procedure and the method which was used, because young people are not, the category is not homogeneous. There are so many intersectionality among the young people itself. So, what were some of your, steps or strategies you used to gather or to have the representation from all the diversities, or maybe some of the diversities and intersectionalities which the young people have, and that could really help in me in my program implementation also, because there are diverse set of young people with different languages, with different culture. So it's important to bring them together and have their representation at such a global level also. So yeah, just wanted to know some of the strategies.
Great question, Yoshika. Can you just clarify who you're directing your question towards?
It's open to all the speakers who share, whoever would like to, share their journey.
Great, thank you. So we'll just take one more question, then I'll open it back to the speakers. So Sarah, you have a question?
It's not a question, it's actually a participation for your question by Arkan. And Sally will be supporting us on translating.
Okay. So a response?
Yes. حاب أناقش بإشي مهم في مجتمعي، ولازم بدي أقسمه بين إنه أحكي عن أهلي وعن إحنا كبنات في المجتمع. إذا ما كان في يعني موافقة من الأهل، ما بنقدر نشارك في جيج أو ما بنقدر نشارك بشكل عام في المجتمع. فإذا ما كان في تواصل بين الأهل، ما كان في علاقات جيدة مع المجتمع، ما بتتوفر لنا، كانت تتوفر لنا من جيج. الإشي اللي خلاني أشارك وإنه موافقة أهلي إني أشارك في منظمة جيج هي إنه تواصل الآمن، أو كان في إنه مواصلات من جيج، كان في تواصل مع الأهل الدائم، كان في علاقاتنا مع مجتمعنا.
Sally, you can translate.
I want to discuss an important issue in my community, and I want to talk about my family and an issue in my community. If the parents do not consent, we cannot participate in GAGE or in any other activity. What helped me to participate in GAGE was my parents' consent, and this is because GAGE has built a good relationships with my family, and they were constantly in communication with them, and they have also built good relationship with my community, and this is what helped me to actually participate with them. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Arkan, for that really important reflection on the importance of family support as well. I don't know whether there are any final reflections to address Yoshika's question, and then we'll move to the breakout. Okay, so Yoshika, hopefully we can continue to discuss your important question about intersectionality as we move into the breakout sessions just now. You will have all signed up when you registered to a breakup room, and there will be in each room a moderator or a facilitator, sorry, and then someone moderating the chat. We will have about 20 minutes, and then we'll all come back, reflect on some of the key points, and then have a wrap up by Dr. Nyaradzayi. So Kate, are you able to move us into the different rooms, please?
Yes, I'm going to open all the rooms now. For those of you who did join late and were not able to select a room, you'll be automatically moved into a room. I hope that's okay. If you have any issues with language translation, please send me a direct message. I'm going to open the rooms now and we'll see you back here shortly.
Brilliant, thank you.
Shall we wait for 1 minute, or there's only 6 people?
I think we've had quite a lot of issues with people joining and then dropping off. So if people do join from now, then they should be automatically moved into this room because I've done it by email.
Okay.
But
am I sharing a screen? Let me try and share a screen. Do you see a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, I see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Just wondering, should we hang on as we only have a small number of additional participants?
I can also move some people who joined late and had just stayed in the main room into here. So that
I'm
we
getting an announcement that says 25 unassigned participants. Are they all being moved in randomly, are they? Or
so they've remained, so the main room has become breakout session.
I see. Yeah. So
I'm going to move. We'll have a couple more people joining.
Okay. There must be some anomaly because it's just the organizers in this room. Switch my video.
So I can see on my list there are other people who have been allocated but have not joined, I think because they've either had an issue with their internet.
Thanks. Just to double check, because we're starting a little bit, a few minutes late.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to set my alarm now for 20 minutes, regardless of what. We need to move on, don't we?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tigist.
I'm so sorry about the issue with the room. I can see that some of the other rooms as well, there's only 6 people. I think there are a lot of people who signed up to the webinar that haven't signed on, and then a lot of people have dropped off.
Yes, we have 3 that haven't joined. We've got Sylvia. Hello, Sylvia. Hi. You are the only person in our
Oh, am
room.
I? I'm so sorry.
Well, don't.
I'd be really happy to hear what you have to say. Sorry, I just kept my camera off because I'm a bit poorly and I'm just sort of like blowing my nose all the time.
Don't
But
worry.
yeah.
Well, no worries at all. You don't need to have your camera on. It's obviously up to you. Yeah.
Well, I would also love to participate in this conversation.
Great.
I haven't seen what you've prepared either.
this is being recorded anyway, isn't it? So
It is, yeah.
Run through it and then we'll just change the conversations aspect and then it's shared content, so it's not a problem.
Great. Okay, Tigist, are you going to take us through stuff?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Tigist Grieve. Thank you so much for coming. And we will move on to discussing our specific chapter on young people in the Global South Voice and Agency. Within that book, our chapter was listening to young people negotiating gender perspectives on voice and agency. And you please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, or if you've got any comments and questions. Our hope is to make this interactive as possible. There are opportunities for you to interact halfway through as well. Generally, there is a moderator note for housekeeping, which is similar to what was in the main meeting room. In the next 20 minutes or so, when we will be taking part in important questions raised by this book. Some of the authors for the chapter are not here, but it draws from all the way from Brazil, Sierra Leone, Bangladesh, Kenya, but also a lot of thematic areas thinking about young people's participation in terms of leadership, but also some of health issues and more. So I invite you to go and read each of these in your own time. Before we do anything as part of the your own understanding, trying to get insight into what you are thinking, we've got a Mentimeter. I'm going to pass on to Evelyn to lead us into that. Evelyn, over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tigist. And again, a warm welcome to those who've joined us to this session. So I guess it's always nice to first get to understand what is voice and agency before we dig in deeper to share our own perspectives as contributors in the book. And a link is going to be shared on the chat. And just to spice up this a little bit, because we are a nice, intimate team sharing about voice and agency, I think I'll also love to open up this conversation to Sylvia and Gude to also share with us, what does agency mean to you as an individual? What does that mean to you? And what does, having a voice mean to you as an individual? So Sylvia and Tigist, even as you're putting in your responses in the Mentimeter that has just been shared by Sue on the chat, kindly also feel free to just unmute and converse with us. We are here to hear your voices and perspective as we learn together.
I'm happy to go in. I don't want to speak over anyone else. So I feel a bit like cheating because my PhD research was sort of like touching on agency. So I feel like I've read the literature and I feel like I'm not the general public here. For me, agency is definitely something that is almost like a perceived responsibility or something that is a capacity. And I feel, and this is my research, this is why I'm happy to listen to what you have to say. It's kind of, while it's coming from within, it is also always in relation to the outside world, to how we're being socialized, or like what is sort of like the opportunities given to us as individuals or even as groups. But yeah, I'll be happy to hear other conceptualizations, ideas on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sylvia. Just to also, still bring you in to kind of also respond to the second question. What does it mean to have a voice in your own perspective? What does that mean to you?
I put a couple of words in the Mentimeter, but I think I would echo Sylvia's sort of emphasis on the relational aspect and being able to sort of act or do things like in sort of, it's mediated by other forces, and sort of shaped by those as well. Yeah, so your opportunities to exercise agency, to act, to sort of, yeah, have the capacity to do something. It's not just something that exists within you as an individual. It's not an intrinsic quality that you have or don't have agency, but it kind of can be, depending on the circumstances that you're in and who's around you, and yeah, and what opportunities you have in that moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also, I think having a voice is a really interesting one, because when I know it kind of implies this, for me it always implies this idea that you have to say something, and I find that such a contradictory kind of way of thinking about it, because for me having a voice is all about listening and being heard. It's kind of, you can say everything you want using your voice, but if you're not being listened to and yeah, no one's kind of doing anything with that, it's kind of not voice at all. And I love all the work that, you know, like Vicky Johnson's work that really encourage us to expand ideas of voice around, you know, the non-verbal ways of having a voice. I think so often that gets missed and isn't considered having a voice at all. Yeah, so I think I feel very strongly about that with voice.
Yeah, and also the ability to not speak. I'm just thinking about, I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who works with people who are deaf, and how just because they can sign and just because they can communicate, there's an expectation that they have to take part. And it was that, you know, being able to actually say, no, we want to keep this for us. We don't want to have to share it because it's ours. It was an interesting kind of, suddenly, like, you know, you're having that ability to just say, no, actually we choose where our voice is used and how we use it, and this isn't forum for us, kind of thing. So
well, that's all about being able to participate in your own sphere of kind of comfort and inclusivity. This idea that everybody should be able to participate in everything, and that this idea of inclusiveness is about making sure everybody can kind of weigh in, isn't necessarily what inclusive means, and what, you know, and how that facilitates having a voice, I guess, you know, that it isn't always comfortable for people to do that, and therefore why do we force that and make that yeah, to aspire to some sort of ideal about participation. I really like that, Sue.
Well, really, really interesting perspectives coming in, you know, from, you know, being an external influence, but also looking at the individual person. And just to quickly run through what we have on Mentimeter on the first question on what does agency mean, there's power, it means action, it means freedom, right? So the freedom, the autonomy of an individual to make decisions for him or herself. It means choices, having choices. But I really love this other, you know, feedback that says not limited by structures. That when you're talking about agency, also we're looking at it on a very big perspective in terms of how it's influenced and the other factors that influence it. So thank you all so very much for your feedback and responses. I don't know, Tigis, if we have any responses to our second question that asked, what does it mean to have a voice? I know we've already delved into it. You know, when we're talking about being able to speak, being able to be listened to and to be heard, I don't know if we've had an opportunity to put in some of the feedback on that too.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Evelyn. Unfortunately, when I was clicking the Menti, my PC crashed. So if Ruth or Sue or Evelyn, if you've got our screen, if you don't mind sharing, that would be really great. And I also saw Dr. Goodar here. I wondered if Dr. Goodar would like to say if you've got any more contribution to add. Thank you. Thanks, Evelyn, for sharing the screen.
All right. I'm not able to see anyone now, Tigis, so
don't worry. That's okay.
Okay, great.
That's okay. We might need to share. Does anyone need the second question on a Menti, or could you see it?
Yeah, I feel like we've discussed it as well as part of the first one.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a separate question when we went into the Mentimeter. It just said agency and 3 choices, I think. So
I see.
And I feel like we kind of discussed it together in it, and we wanted to talk a little bit more about the role that intersectional identities play in kind of the ability to exercise agency and having a voice. And I think it would be good to get to that part of the discussion and session, Tigis, because how much time do we have left, Kate?
3 minutes, unfortunately. Yeah, not much time.
Could Evelyn or anyone of you could take us to our slide, please?
I'll do that quickly.
Thank you very much.
So I think we've only got 3 minutes left. We should pose the discussion question.
Yes, that one.
Okay, I think also it would be nice for us to sort of like a little bit share on this question on how might social differences such as age, gender, race, class, disability, sexuality, citizenship status, and marital status affect a young person's opportunity to have a voice and to be listened to. So just feel free to, take the mic and also let us hear your opinion and perspectives around this. And feel free to also put it on the chat, so will definitely help us read those out.
So I'll jump in if no one is wanting to go first. But I mean, I think what our section in the book is trying to do is kind of highlight as many of the ways these intersectional identities play a role in how young people exercise agency and voice, and how they pattern those kind of things about agency and voice. And I think one of the things that strikes me about the case studies in our chapter is the role that relationships and connections, personal connections, play as an agency thickener. And so we've got a few case studies in our book that show how that can help kind of thicken agency, but also how that can work to constrain agency and voice, where intergenerational power dynamics are at play, for example. So I quite like the way our chapters do that. And also to show how these things are not static. So Patricio's chapter is really good at showing how agency and voice are dynamic across time and space. And I think that's kind of something to think about, that marginalization due to an inability to exercise agency and voice does change. It isn't something that sticks the same. So just sort of wanted to share a bit about what's in our section, I guess, sort of just so that people can see the variety of things there. And the last thing I wanted to share in our section, I suppose, about this discussion question is the contribution of the youth case studies in our section, which all show the value of young people's voices and agency in creating change, but all pose a challenge to us that this isn't good enough. The way that they're able to engage often isn't good enough to kind of actually allow that action and change to happen to them. So I think that's kind of a real, call to action.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ruth. And maybe also just to jump in and add on from my own perspective in terms of where I'm coming from, Kenya in the Western region, and how culture and tradition constantly have shaped how young people, women and girls experience and explore their agency. And in most extent, it becomes a deterrent for adolescent girls to really express their voices, but also strongly experience their agency and feel free, having the freedom to make choices for themselves, but also knowing that they're heard and they're listened to. So I definitely think that in the different spaces that we have, from culture to age, there are actually underlying factors that really do influence how, as young people, we experience our agency, but also express our voices.
Again, if you move to the next slide, we are about to go. All I want to say is, I think, just to say thank you for coming, but to encourage you to read the chapters and the book, which has a lot to extend our understanding about, and asking us further questions, challenging us. What do we take from here? How do we engage in deep listening and call upon further?
Or phone call. For the next slide, We have photos taken by youth on violence. And this is all that I could fit in that time, but for sure it's a wide discussion to have. But I'm looking forward for the discussion that we will be having together right now. Kara?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm noticing also that we came back to plenary, so I'm not sure we have time for the rest of the discussion at this point. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, you're right, Kara. I think all of the conversations have been more truncated than we hoped, but hopefully there were a few starting points. Kate, do we have everybody back?
Yes, we do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all so much, and apologies that we didn't quite have enough time to get going with some of those conversations. What we'd like to do now is just to have a very brief feedback from each of the facilitators for the groups. So if we start with Louisa and Given on youth citizenship in the Global South.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks so much. Sorry, we got a bit cut off. So, but Given, do you want to give a few of your thoughts and I can add to it, or the other way around, whatever you prefer?
Yeah, I think I'll go first, then you'll just add on. Oh yeah. So I think one takeaway that I got from our session, so before we got cut off, there's something quite interesting that was said. So we having to redefine crisis, in a global context. So instead of coming to think of crisis as those magnitude disasters, those your floods and so forth, redefine crisis in a young person's perspective, So I think that was a really good takeaway because it is youth centered. So that was one takeaway from me from the session. So yeah, I think you can go ahead, Louisa. Let me not take too much time. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I think that was a really important one. We were talking about sort of how young people experience crisis. I guess for me, only, 2 or 3 things. I think there was a really kind of lively, interesting discussion, and we all kind of converge around the idea that citizenship is more than legal status. It's much more about sort of meaningful participation, about voice and agency, and about sort of being engaged in your communities, and that this can be beyond sort of formal politics or even being explicitly political, but rather kind of thinking about how we contribute to how young people contribute to the nation and to the communities around them. And I think there was some really fascinating discussions about kind of how we can think of every aspect of our lives as political, and what that means in terms of how we see young people as citizens, and sort of not take their citizenship and take our own understanding of citizenship for granted. So there was a lot of rich material in there, even in a short period of time. So thanks everyone in the group.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Given and Louisa. So now turning to the second group who talked about understanding agency and voice. So I'm handing over to Sue, Tigist, Ruth, and Evelyn, please.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole. I think from our group discussions around understanding voice and agency, we were really just, conversing around what does it mean exactly for a young person to have a voice, but also to experience agency in the best and in the strongest way possible. And the conversations were just around, creating spaces that allow young people to actually shape, the space for their own participation, that they feel relevant, that they feel heard, that they feel seen, but also they feel respected in these spaces, so that they're able to fully express who they are with their own voices, but also understanding and knowing that they are loved and they're cared for. And one of the other interesting bits is that we got to talk about how we actually experience voice differently. Of course, we are coming from the space of knowing voices, coming out and speaking and standing up and speaking, but also understanding that from the other levels that young people are coming from, we get to experience voice differently, and we also get to express our agency in different ways that might be influenced by either our age, by either our sexuality, or even the cultures that we are coming in from. So that's just a bit of what we have discussed, but I'm also happy to welcome in either Ruth, Sue, or Tigist to also kind of add more spice into that.
Sue, over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. I think there's a lot of spice in what you said, and the touch on all the aspects that we discussed. And it was a really interesting discussion. Just want to thank the participants in our group. Thank you.
Brilliant. Some fantastic points there. Thank you for the really succinct summary. That's brilliant. If we can go to the third group now. So I'd like to ask Cara and Sarah to reflect on researching young people's voice and agency.
Sure. Unfortunately, we didn't have a ton of time for the actual discussion portion, but we did have some really great comments in our icebreaking session. And, I think most of what people shared were around themes of youth leadership in research and making sure that, youth are given a safe and enabling environment to make sure that they can lead, that they can be partners, and that they are empowered to share their perspectives. And then also the concept around youth as experts on their own voice and agency, so that when we think about research and when we think about ways that we can include youth in the research process, that we need to make sure that young people are acknowledged as experts, and they're not just, included as thinking about their own experiences of voice and agency, but that they also have deep insight into what youth voice and agency looks like among their peers and in their contexts. And so, that validates their not just inclusion in the research, methods, but also in leading them and guiding them. Sarah, can you add to that or share some of your reflections as well?
Sarah, do we still have you?
I hope so. I'm not sure we do.
Yeah.
Well, and then also some of the participatory methods that Sarah shared, I think, were really fantastic examples of ways of including marginalized youth and youth that are often harder to reach, and that we need to make sure that the methods that we are using, not just for the research itself, but also our recruitment strategies and the ways that we consent youth and ethically include youth, that we need to make sure that the methods we are using are not just reaching the populations that are most accessible, but that we need to make sure we're including those, who might be from displaced communities, from those who have experienced trauma or violence, and those that might not be in what we consider traditional households. And Sarah shared some great examples of ways that we can do that.
Thanks so much, Cara. Brilliant. So the fourth group was looking at citizenship beyond borders. So if I can hand over to Roberta and Michelle, thanks.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, yeah, we didn't necessarily get the chance to dive into all the questions, but we kind of looked at how citizenship as an everyday practice allows us to explore how young people exercise agency in relation to everyday concerns, such as climate change, violence, and social injustices in the more general terms. And we kind of focused on understanding on the fact that it is important to understand citizenship as a fluid concept, and particularly when looking at citizenship in the context of migration, whether voluntary or forced, it's important to understand how young people redevelop or engage with their citizenship. And it is very important to understand some of the emotional aspects attached to redeveloping citizenship. Therefore, we kind of talked about the importance of understanding citizenship as an emotional journey amongst young people.
Great. Yes, and we also may be sharing some of the questions that we didn't get to through an innovative Mentimeter format after this, so watch this space. And then the final group, so I'll hand over to Patricio and Carlos to reflect on policies and programming to support voice agency and civic participation.
Carlos will go first.
Brilliant. Carlos, can you hear us okay?
Yeah. So in the private home where we're in, we took care to get to know each other a little and showing the work that is happening here in Brazil and in other countries in the world about hunger, climate change, discrimination, and the research that we are doing and others that we already did. And Mega said the efforts need to include children in research. We talk about the need to promote child-led review and how the evidence can be used for activism and to make a change. The importance to have children, adolescents, and young people being part of those space, right?
Yes, one more thing to add, just the final one, because Carlos covered all, is how, for instance, children, young people, and youth in Brazil, they use the finding from their own research for activism, make a change, to organize themselves, building their own voice with credibility. That space was remarkable for them.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much for those great reflections. What I'd like to do now is to hand over to Dr. Nyaradzayi Gumbonzvanda, who's with UN Women and also the Rosaria Memorial Trust.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nicola Jones. It has been such a pleasure to work on this amazing book together with colleagues and the amazing authors. Congratulations. We also want to thank our publishers. We are all, this is a critical resource for contributing to the discourse at the moment. There are 5 key points I wish to emphasize, and some of it has already been raised in the breakout sessions. So the first is that young people are more than a statistic or a footnote in a book or a photo in the development publications. They are actually experts with experience, with voice, with perspective, with networks and with aspirations. So that is very profound, and we've had some of the young people, young researchers speak to us today. The second is that context matters. Whether it's a context of displacement, humanitarian situation, urban, rural, one might carry a passport of one country but is living in another country. One is in marriage or not. So context and status of every young person is so critical to be part of contributing to the discussions and to the policy arena. And therefore, if we have to move from top down, it really means we start from the experiences and the context of young people. Thirdly, and it has been repeated severally, that young people demographically are actually shaping the world, if we just look at the numbers. So it's actually an imperative. It's not a choice, it's an imperative. If we are to see development, if we are to secure human rights, if we are to balance people, planet, and planet, we must center the experiences and voices of young people within communities. Therefore, this book is telling us how we do it. I think the fourth critical issue is around violence. That has been mentioned several times, whether it's family violence, domestic violence, conflict, wars, and how violence undermines the capabilities of young people, how it can exploit, but also drag us back, even on the gains that have been made. And the last critical point that has been raised is we are part of creating a social movement, a movement that connects the knowledge space, the research space, the policy space, and the transformation space within our communities. And therefore, it is very critical that we look into some of the outcomes and the analysis from this book to feed into the Summit for the Future, the consultations that will be happening in Nairobi. And I'm really looking forward to also how we bring this into the Commission on the Status of Women, with my new role at the UN as the Deputy Executive Director at UN Women. I'm coming into this space more equipped, more confident, because we have the tools and the analysis to shape the work that we need to do. And ultimately, the local is global. Young people's voice, agents, and civic participation starts by influencing the daily environment that we live in, whilst transforming the policies and the structural inequalities that shape the world that we live in, and therefore must always understand the inequalities that and the intersectionalities, including of race, class, and gender, that must always be addressed in the work that we do with young people. It has just been fantastic to work together and to be part of this movement around young people's voice, agency, and civic participation. So thank you so much. And again, congratulations to all.
Huge thank you for those very inspiring and important words. Thanks a lot. Just hoping that we might have a final opportunity to hear from Jason. I understand he has managed to join us. Jason, do you have any brief reflecting remarks you'd like to make? Okay, it looks as though we haven't quite managed. Jason, are you there?
Oui, je suis là.
Brilliant. Go ahead, please.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jason, j'ai maintenant 20 ans et je suis de la République démocratique du Congo, donc DRC. Je suis un jeune activiste qui a personnellement, j'ai rejoint le Parlement d'AFA. J'avais encore 12 ans. Et si j'ai rejoint le Parlement d'AFA, c'est parce que je voulais me battre contre ma situation. Parce que je suis né dans une région où la guerre, c'est un quotidien. Chaque jour, il y a la guerre, chaque jour, il y a des morts, chaque jour, il y a des ça ne va pas. Et je voulais vraiment me battre. La plupart de ceux de mon âge, ils ont rejoint les groupes armés parce qu'ils pensaient que c'était un moyen pour eux de se débattre contre la mauvaise situation dans laquelle on se trouvait. Mais moi, je voulais me battre légalement. Je voulais donner le meilleur de moi-même en restant dans les droits. Et c'est comme ça que je me suis dit qu'il fallait que je cherche l'ici où je pouvais trouver la voie. Et c'est là que je suis parti au Parlement d'AFA, pourvu que j'ai une place, que j'ai une foi, que j'ai une voix et que mon engagement puisse servir à quelque sorte aux autres AFA de ma communauté. Et après, j'ai rejoint le club des AFA reporters parce que je voulais reporter ce qu'il y avait comme difficulté dans ma communauté à ceux qui pouvaient trouver des solutions. Parce que j'ai pensé que
we work with a youth journalist and we try to get to discuss about the problems and to find for solutions. So I wanted to help my community, to help the young people, the ones who cannot be listened to, the most vulnerable ones. I wanted to ensure that their voices are heard before the decision makers. So my vision was to formulate the needs of the young people and to be like a role model for them so that we can support the change. And also I became a leader, a young leader in my community, to share our experiences, to help other people, to help each other, to ensure that we can contribute to find solutions. So that helped me to become a young person with playing a key role at the international level, is to have a voice, to be listened to. It's so important at local level, at community level. It is really important for many people. And for me, it was so important because I became the role model for the other young people in my village. Because in the developing countries, it is really difficult to, to show, to express your ideas, to ensure that the ideas or opinions of the rest of the children can be heard in order to advocate for their needs, in order to ensure that the rest of the world know what is happening at local level, and trying to contribute with one stone for the whole building. And through that work of change, transformation, of course, we face challenges, obstacles, but then we learn how to overcome those obstacles. But thanks to my voice, thanks to my fight, I've been able to talk to the adults, to talk to the decision makers, and to ensure that they listen to us, that in order to put the young people issues on the table, to avoid arbitrary decisions, to avoid they don't think in the young people as key agents, because in sometimes they want to fight against activists. They send young people to jail, but I think that I've been able to talk to them. I've been able to negotiate with the political leaders. Thanks to my experiences, I've been able to have the freedom to express. I have been able to exercise my right. I now am self-confident, and I think the people behind me are looking at me as a role model, and now I am of the young people, very well-known young people. I have credibility in my community, and I am like the spokesperson, because I've been able to talk the door to the president of the republic, and he opened that door for me, and I know that anyone else can do it. I was able to do it, and I think that many other young people could follow my example. So I was empowered, I felt independent, and I was able to fight for the rights of the young people. So I'm trying to make a call, to an invitation to all the people, so that we, all the young people, work together, because we need to be identified as individuals, as persons.
Well, what a fantastic way to conclude today's event, with that really powerful statement about the importance of inclusive participation for all young people, including in high-level policy and political fora. So thank you so much, Jason, for your patience and for making the effort to reflect on your experiences with us today. So that just leaves me to thank everybody very much for your time. I do apologize for having run over time, but it's been great to have everyone with us. I'd like to make a special vote of thanks for all of the young people who have joined today, to all of the facilitators, and also to the FCDO for funding for the GAGE program that was able to support some of the work in the book. Please do check out the website. The introduction is available open access, and you'll see on the final slide that if you can encourage family and friends and professors to buy the book, there's currently a 20% discount with this flyer. So do encourage as many people as possible to get a copy. We will follow up with some key summary points, hopefully in the next week. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to continuing the conversations with you all going forward. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.